Welcome to my review of Black Mass, directed by Scott Cooper, a film that centers on the true events surrounding notorious gangster James Whitey Bulger, who forms an alliance with John Connolly of the FBI to rid South Boston of the Italian mob. Black Mass is a film that has gotten a lot of publicity, primarily, of course, because of Johnny Depp. A lot of people have been saying that this is not just him phoning it in, this is him returning to form, not doing the typical Jack Sparrow routine. And speaking of Jack Sparrow and Pirates of the Caribbean, that's one of those performances I think started out pretty great, but by the second film, and especially by the third film, it kind of started to run its course, and he just kind of kept on doing it, whether you're talking about the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean, or you're talking about something like The Lone Ranger. And when he's not doing the whole Jack Sparrow routine, it just seems as if he's just finding other ways to phone it in, and his films, as of recently, have not done all too well critically, and financially, they have not done all too well either. So that just goes to show you that a lot of people have grown tired of Johnny Depp and his whole thing that he does. And in fact, the last movie that I enjoyed that had Johnny Depp in it was Rango, and that was back from 2011. And furthermore, that was a CGI animated film. So in other words, he wasn't actually in the film in the flesh. So as far as a movie that I enjoyed that had him in it was Sweeney Todd from 2007. And also, that was probably the last, well, besides Big Eyes, that's probably the last great Tim Burton film. So now coming off from what I've heard is the horrible stench of Mordecai, Johnny Depp is now in Black Mass, and he plays James Whitey Bulger, the notorious gangster, who I will talk about a little later. But I have to agree with all those people who have been saying that this is him returning to form, because Johnny Depp is fantastic in this movie, and in fact, he's the best thing about it. And yes, he does use the makeup kit. He's got the icy cold blue contacts, he's got the very light blonde hair, he's got the incredibly pale skin, but he uses it very effectively. He not only looks like a monster, but he acts like a monster, and I'm not talking about necessarily the acts that he commits, I'm talking about just the mannerisms. I mean, he just looks like the kind of person you would never, ever, ever fuck with. Yet Johnny Depp does provide the character with a nice amount of charisma, and it's the kind of character that you would definitely want on your side, and I would even go as far as to say that he's probably the most likable character in the entire film, which may or may not be a problem, which I will discuss a little later. But when you do cross that line, you're done, which makes for some very, very intense and suspenseful scenes. There are a handful of scenes in this movie where I really was unsure of how everything was going to play out, but another thing that I find to be very commendable is the character James Whitey Bulger, because usually with these kinds of characters, it's so easy to go over the top, make this character get angry, and they just start beating the shit out of anything that's near him. It's kind of become a cliche at this point, to the point where it's just not even really all that threatening. It's just like, well, of course, he's just having a little temper tantrum. And for those of you out there who might not be aware of this, but the movie The Departed, with Jack Nicholson, who plays Costello, that character is actually based on James Whitey Bulger, which is pretty cool. I just think that's just something interesting to mention. However, now I've come to the point in this review where I start talking about the film itself. And the film itself is decent to good. For starters, the film doesn't seem as if it has a legitimate sense of structure, whether you're talking about the characters, because there's not a central character in this film, or whether you're talking about just the plot, because it just seems to kind of meander, or at least it did to me. And usually I'm somebody who's very much okay with the film not following a linear structure, because hell, I am a big Scorsese fan. A lot of his films don't follow a linear path and are focused more on characters. But the problem here is that the characters in this film, not only are they not very likable, they're just not captivating at all, outside of James Whitey. I'm somebody who doesn't have to like or really care for a character at all in order to be enthralled by a character. For instance, you look at Henry Hill from Goodfellas, or you look at Jordan Belfort from The Wolf of Wall Street, both very despicable parasites of the world. But at the same time, they're captivating. You want to know more about these guys. You want to know what makes them tick, what makes them do the things that they do. Here, not so much. There's a bulk of this film that follows John Connolly, played by Joel Egerton, and as I was watching it, I couldn't decide whether it was him or whether it was his character, and as I kind of reached the end, I was like, well, I think it's a bit of both of them. Outside of maybe Warrior, I can't say that I've ever really liked a Joel Egerton performance. Maybe it's because of his face. He just seems to always have like this dumbfounded look. He doesn't seem to really emote all too well. The guy just doesn't really do it for me. And plus it doesn't help either that his character isn't all too special. I mean, he's just basically there to deliver FBI related dialogue, which isn't all too enthralling, or at least in terms of how it's presented. And throughout the film, it keeps on reminding us, the audience, that Connolly is infatuated with Bulger, and I never got a genuine sense of that. The film constantly brings up how Connolly used to look up to Bulger as a kid, and I kind of wish the film had actually shown that to kind of give a little bit more flair to their relationship, kind of like how it is in The Departed, where you get to see Colin meeting Costello for the first time as a kid as well, and you get to see Costello seduce Colin with the idea of money and power, and then by the end of the opening scene, you see Jack Nicholson emerge from the shadows with that sadistic smile, and then you're just kind of like, oh shit, he has just made a deal with the devil. And I've heard some people talk about how there is a lack of an emotional core here, and that's true because I never felt attached to the characters, as I've already suggested. But really, there's only one scene in the film where I really felt a sense of emotion, and that's from the Johnny Depp character, of course, Bulger. And it takes place in a hospital. And if you know the history, you might know what this is, but I thought that was a pretty effective scene. So if I had to pick a character that I actually cared for, it would be Johnny Depp's. And that's not exactly great considering that he is by far the most atrocious character in the entire film. However, I will say this, the only time I found myself caring for characters that were not Depp's, and I'm kind of using that word loosely, caring, was when they were acting with Depp and I knew that person was probably about to die. So I guess you can kind of count that maybe. But then again, I think I was more affected by Depp's performance versus them. As a whole, the performances I thought were pretty solid to actually really good. Benedict Cumberbatch, Dakota Johnson, I would have really liked to see more of her in the film. W. Earl Brown from The Last of Us, who plays Bill, thought that was pretty cool seeing him on the big screen. There's also Peter Sarsgaard. As for any other problems that I have, there are scenes that cut to the actors playing their characters, of course, and they're being interviewed by the FBI. And I understand why it's there. It's there to inform you with what's going on, what you're seeing on screen. But I disliked it because of one, it disrupts the flow of the film, and two, I could not understand what the hell they were saying sometimes because they would just mumble their words. It's like, why the hell are you even going to have that there if you can't even understand what the hell they're saying? I get that it's trying to be authentic, but it simply did not work in my opinion. Overall, Black Mass is a really good film and in some ways even great when Johnny Depp is on screen, but when he's not on screen, you have Joel Egerton leading the film with just kind of lackluster dialogue. It's just decent at best. The writing, along with his performance, was something that just didn't really hold my attention all too well. However, and very much thankfully, Johnny Depp was there to keep me invested. So I'm going to give Black Mass a decent 3.5 out of 5. If you're somebody who's been waiting on that great Johnny Depp comeback, then I would recommend this film at perhaps a matinee or maybe rent it when it comes out on DVD. But if you're somebody who is not a Johnny Depp fan at all, then this is probably a skip. Or, better yet, if you're somebody who has never seen it, then I would just recommend The Departed because that is a brilliant film. And I know this might seem a little unfair to say such a thing, but I kind of wish that this film were directed by somebody like Scorsese because he's somebody who knows how to put you in that world of what he's presenting. He knows how to do characters. He definitely knows how to do style, and he definitely knows how to entertain, to keep you engaged. This film just doesn't do that. But then again, I am comparing this film to, or Scott Cooper, to one of the greatest storytellers in all of cinema. If you're somebody who has seen Black Mass, let me know what you think of it. Or if you're somebody who has seen The Departed, let me know what you think of that as well. As always, I'm Colin Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.